Well, in the U.S., Congress is set to vote on a bill that includes a $159 billion budget for the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. That's more than the $128 billion budget for the 2010 fiscal year. Official cost for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan for almost the past decade now has surpassed $1.1 trillion. However, many analysts believe that the actual cost may be 3 times more. Washington says that most of the money for the wars has gone to Iraq, but now much of the budget is focused on the war in Afghanistan, as the U.S. has around 150,000 troops there. For more on that story, we're now joined by Ian Williams, who is with Foreign Policy in Focus, who now joins us on the line from New York. Mr. Williams, as always, thank you for joining our broadcast. Now, though increasing defense spending now, the Pentagon says the war budget will actually fall drastically to $50 billion by 2012 because of the Iraq withdrawal and Afghanistan wind down. Will that appease a bankrupt American public?
Well, it's not the American public, it's the defense industry lobbyists and the new incoming Republican chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee in the House of Representatives wants to increase military spending by 4 to 5% a year, as opposed to the budgeted 1%. And the question that very few of the elected representatives are prepared to ask is why we need a defense budget of its present size, let alone a larger one.
Right. Now, the Obama budget plans to spend more on the Pentagon over 8 years than any administration has since World War II. Is that simply a sign of the times, or is Obama maybe becoming the true warmonger in comparison to George W.?
It's down to domestic politics. The Democrats are always on the defensive. The Republicans are seen as the party of security and defense, so the Democrats are always trying to pander to them. In fact, the budget is actually far bigger. If you look at the figures for the Budget Committee, under water and energy, for example, you will see improving the nuclear stockpile. You see large amounts under construction for veterans affairs. So some estimates say that between 40 and 50% of the U.S. federal budget goes on military spending, which is a far higher proportion than any equivalent government in the world. And in the end, if I were an enemy of America, I would wish them to carry on spending like this because they're speeding the way it's speeding the country into bankruptcy.
Right, so talking about bankruptcy now, if anything has been learned from these wars that have been waged in Iraq and Afghanistan, shouldn't it be that throwing money at the problem doesn't actually solve the issue, as the U.S. seems to have admitted itself by supporting talks now with their arch enemies, the Taliban?
Well, it's not so. No one in the U.S. in government is opposed to throwing money at the problem. It's the way they spend it. And in fact, some of the real ideologues in the Republican Party, they want to maintain military spending because they're scared that if the military spending is reduced, that will give the Democrats more money to spend on social welfare programs that they are deeply and ideologically opposed to. So they would rather spend money dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq or building bases in the rest of the world than building homes and hospitals and schools for poor people in America. It's difficult to calculate, but that's the way they think.
All right, we will have to leave it there for now. That was Ian Williams with Foreign Policy in Focus joining us on the line from New York. Mr. Williams, as always, thank you very much for your insight.